Hello everyone, welcome to the Tech Podcast series. This is Lakshit Pant, your host for today, and today I'm having a special guest with me, Sriram sir, who is a very great professional who is having an incredible experience in the industry. Tech Podcast series is an initiative of Azure Developer Community, and this initiative is a part of Open Source Day India 2 that we are doing with alongside Microsoft with the support of Microsoft and multiple cities. And this initiative supports multiple offline as well online events. So today we are going to talk about open source, the developments in the open source, and a little bit and about the fintech industry and how we can empower or integrate both these things. And we will try to understand from our expert speaker like how these two domains can be integrated and how we can make a better and innovative future with this. So first of all, Sriram sir, if you could request if you could introduce yourself a bit.
Yeah. Hi everyone. So yeah, thanks for having me here. So yeah, about me, I'm Sriram. I head engineering for M2P Fintech. So M2P Fintech is an fintech solutions company which started in 2014, November 14, 2014, and it's a baby which has been growing for past 8 years in the fintech world. And I head engineering here, and the engineering means like I take care of the entire engineering portfolio across different products in M2P. A few of the things which I do here is like take care of the end-to-end architecture and the delivery of products and how the engineering culture is set. This is one of the primary, I would say, responsibilities of me in M2P. So I was part of the initial team which started M2P in 2014, where the first lines of code was written by me and another person, Kannan Murli, and eventually we went back to US on 2016 on different assignments, and I came back on 2022 to head the engineering after I serve in other companies as well. So that's about me. And to start about M2P FinTech, as I said, it started on November 14, so I'm still calling it as a baby. It's an 8-year-old baby, and it seemed like it started with developing a closed loop wallet platform. So that is where it all started, and we started building the layers by connecting it to card systems, and then we started building products for with prepaid, then credit, and then debit cards, and then we ventured into solutions like BNPL. And on the way, we have acquired few companies. Few of them are on core banking systems, in user identity. If you say user identity, basically on eKYC and video KYC, um, as responsibilities of those teams. And then we came across and we took over an LMS company called Finflex to basically build a bank in a box or an lending in a box kind of solution, where any fintech or a bank can, if they have an license, right, they can come in and then they can build their entire stack on M2P. So that's what M2P does, and that's what I do in M2P.
Yeah, so my first question for you would be, as a head of engineering, what it looks like because M2P FinTech is in 20 plus countries. So what it looks like to be, to lead, and especially when you have built the company from very scratch, you have worked with the company from very scratch. As you mentioned, the first line of code was written by you. So how it looks like to head the engineering department, especially for such a big FinTech company.
Yep. So this is a great learning opportunity for me. I started my career in 2006, and have been in multiple organizations, learning a lot of stuff. And I'm a proponent of open source. So from day one, when M2P came in, right, the first lines of code and architecture was built on open source. So in the entire journey in M2P, right, there are two different things which M2P did. One is it organically grew till 2019, then it also acquired, right? So there are two different challenges which I was part of. One is the organic growth, where the systems has to scale from few customers to millions of customers. Then how do we integrate when we inorganically grow, that is acquired companies, and how to platformize everything and bring it under a single platform, right? So these are the two main challenges which I have learned in the past 8 years. And yeah, I see it as an learning, a place where I can learn and I can grow myself, though being an founder, right? So one of the founding members, right? So that is what I see as a whole in M2P, right?
Yeah, that's very nice. And just, when it comes, so I just wanted to explore about M2P fintech a little bit more. So, how do you empower? You said you empower fintechs, you empower banks and multiple businesses. So, what type of solution do you provide? If you could elaborate for our audience, it would be really helpful.
So yeah, so we are basically, if you see right, and parallels is we wanted to be the AWS for businesses, right,
Okay.
for fintechs. So that is what our vision is, right. So that means that if you have an idea, if you need the rails for that business to come in, that is like a fintech, right. If you want to start a fintech, or if you want to start a bank, right, you can approach M2P. So that is what our what we give to our customers are. We don't want to build a B2C solutions to our customers, because we are not into an B2C arena, but we are concentrating on B2B mostly, right. Whenever it is needed, whenever we identify that there is a market for something and there is nobody who is available to basically look it as a market, right, that is where we build proof of concepts, right. One of them being like doing an FD backed credit cards with no touch points, physical touch points with bank, right. So that is something which is industry first, which we developed as a proof of concept, and then we showed going live with one of our partners, and eventually that picked up as a platform. Right now more partners come in and they wanted to replicate the same, and we being that platform where they can replicate it, right. So if you say parallels, right, once Netflix wanted to give on demand video, right, they partnered with AWS, and they built all the systems around how you can stream data, and how your load balancer has to be in, right. The same way you can see it as M2P, right. If you have a great idea, you come to M2P, we will we will partner with you, and that is where you will be able to bring in solution to your customers faster with our knowledge of fintech, and then our infrastructure on fintech.
Yes, so I have a very, for me, it's a very exciting question, and I just wanted to explore. So we see a lots of things in the market, and the building a technology that is in-house is not a simple task. That is a very daunting task, and M2B FinTech did a really great job building all the tech in the in-house tech, especially. So, how challenging do you find picking up the right people at the right time, and how has been your journey all around these years? I just wanted to know, because
Yeah.
making us secure, because when we are talking about a fintech department, right, fintech industry, we have to definitely think about the security purposes. There are lots of things, because we are managing the assets, the most important assets of these big companies. So how do you ensure all these things?
Yep. So yeah, like you said, there is a people portion, and how do we went along with the roadmap for past 8 years in building all the system. It's not something which we built on day one, right. So the same thing is the thing is, if it is that vision, right, where we have to be, is what drives us in choosing what will not change for in our system, right, even after certain amount of time, right. Let's say for example 5 or 6 or 8 years, right. So if you see that how M2P evolved, right, we on day one we haven't built everything inside, right. So we had the vision of building everything eventually, but what we identified in the process is what I have to build first, right. So that is what has driven us to build the wallet platform, right. So if the idea is, once we have built the wallet platform, where you can get your customers and give them a wallet, right. So that is like your centralized ledger. You can integrate it with multiple places. Like for example, you can integrate it with a credit card and say a credit card processing engine. You can integrate it with a fuel card and make it as a fuel card engine. You can integrate it with UPA and make sure that your ledger has this UPA, right. So these are the channels with which you can integrate, on top of which you can solutionize, right. So the vision was already there, saying that where we have to be, and in the process we broke it down into multiple Legos, and eventually we came across that core Lego, which is the wallet, right. And initially we had the integration with multiple partners for all these channels to basically stabilize our wallet platform. Then we started building all the channels when they matured. with our third party vendors, right, the third party partners, right, we started taking them one by one into our system itself. That is how it has grown. And the same way is what we basically built our people as well, right. We sat and it's like initially it's two engineers, me and another person, Kanan Murli, who basically built the valet platform, and that valet platform still runs in M2P even after 8 years, right. So that has not been changed for 8 years, right. Then we started identifying what are the third party components which we want to replace. Then we started building the engineering bandwidth through different ways. One is reaching out to people in colleges. Actually, we went to different colleges, trying to say how it is. Reaching out to friends and family to see whether they wanted to be part of the next thing, and also reaching out to ex-colleagues, right? So to see what their interests are, right? So it's more or less we go on meetings with them, go for a chai shop or wherever, right? So just to see what how we synergize, right. First thing is the synergy between the people, whether they want to build the next system. Then comes the skills, right. So whether they are aligned with the skills of open source, or like what thinking we have, right. So that is the next part, right. So first thing is whether they are aligned to building this platform. The next thing is the skills, and the third thing is obviously is like the pros and cons for them, right. Sit with them, we say what is the pros if you stay with us, and if you are going to go, because you are the initial members of the team, right. That is how we built each and every Lego block, and that is how organically the team grew. And in such a way, like when we are investing so much on people, right, the one thing is the idea is being already edged in their mind. So that means that it's not a day job for them, and attrition is not something which we have to care about, right. Because up until I would say 2021, even after COVID, right, our attrition rates are very very low, right. I would even say still the core 20 members of the team is still with us, right. So that means that uh, that is how you build a team, right. You see them as a partner, right, not as an employee. So that is what I believe M2P has done a great job in that side.
Yeah, that's very nice. And you had, you just mentioned about the term open source. I wanted to know how does a open source term fits inside a fintech industry? What are the significances you think open source can make in a fintech industry, and how it has made any impact in the development of fintech industry?
Yeah, so that's a good question, right? So open source has always been it's always been used across industries where there is so much of, I would say, iterations or innovations, right? I call it as iterations as innovation because they iterate fast, and as a result, innovation happens fast, and customer behavior changes a lot. That is where more new ideas come in and more new open source tools come in, right? But in fintech or in payments or wherever, right, wherever financial industry is, the real use case is stability, right. You have to be stable and you have to be precise. That means that lot of inputs needs, I mean, like lot of decisions has to be made on how we can secure and make it available for our customers, right. Security is first, next comes the stability, right. uh, that is what is the predominant scene for financial services or industries, or sorry, or companies who are running in financial industries always care for. That has always been a case even when we started 2014, when M2P started 2014, right. So um, whether we have all the security controls in place is really what made sure that is the money of one person should not move to another person, or some other person should not take up your money, right. So that is our whatever you are entitled to, right. So that is what open source has always been seen as, whether is it secure or not. So when we took up the initial codes, right, uh, we had two things, right. We can develop faster because there are open source tools which are available, right. And we didn't had so much of cash in bank, right. That makes that basically says that, yeah, I can just go and buy anything, premiers, a tool which comes up with all the bells and whistles for all the security, right? So uh, you can iterate faster, yes, with open source because you have so much of tools. But in the process of we iterating faster, there are a lot of I would say speed breakers. One is how secure is this, right? So we have to get into the roots of that open source to understand where the gaps are. And also we read through all the regulations in the process, and we were able to identify what the gaps are, and we were able to put in the I would say the gatekeepers for those items so that we are secure with open source, right? So this gave us a lot of confidence as we started building more blocks, and we were able to move to cloud faster than some of our competitors, where they always wanted an off the shelf like off the shelf system, and they have to go by their architecture alone, right? So when we are
Yes.
taking up open source, it's always the architecture, right? So
Yeah, so now as you have enlightened me so much about the open source and the security purposes in the fintech industry, I'm very excited to ask you this question. So, are there any challenges as a as a head of engineering you face that when it comes to using open source software, and how did you overcome came those challenges? I am really excited for this question.
yeah, I would point out that a thing which came up in end of 2021, I believe, which is Log4j2 vulnerability, which the entire world was spoke about, right? Log4j2 is a logging library, right? What happens with that is everybody in Java world or anything which built on Java uses Log4j, right? Some version or another of Log4j, and there is a zero-day vulnerability which happened, right? Those
Right.
are the things which keeps the systems at risk, right? Saying that when we pick up something from open source, this is something which is bound to happen, right? So when we pick up open source, the real part is, yes, you have to accept the fact that all the systems, even the previous support system, is built on top of like things which are open source nowadays, right? So the only thing which you get from an industry standard software is they support you, right? So if you basically believe in getting their support, right, the thing which you can outsource is the headache of these kind of vulnerable zero-day vulnerabilities where you have to track it to, right? But if you are basically going for open source, right, the understanding of the software which you are taking from open source has to be deep for you to basically make the judgment of you can pick up open source, right? So for Log4j, the entire world changed it, right? There are premier software which gave you patches, but you have to have downtimes and things like that. But here, what we faced in M2P is, right, when you are replacing those Log4j tools, we already had the bells and whistles around what kind of vulnerabilities can attack the Log4j tool. So we are already safe with that, right? With that library. So what we have to do is we don't even need to take a downtime with our partners. It has to be an internal change because we have put in all the controls around anybody to get access into the system itself, right? So when you are picking up open source, my advice is go deep and understand what are the gaps.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong. And this has been possible just because you have built everything from very scratch and in-house. I guess this is the very major reason of you getting not affected by those log4j packages. I guess if I'm not sure how much right and wrong I'm about this
Yeah,
statement.
the understanding. Yeah, so the thing is, it is the understanding, right? So you take up an software, let's say for example, an open source analytics platform like Metabase, right? The thing is, you basically get into each part of the code and you have to understand the code, right? Because
Yes.
you are the owner of the code, right? When you are deploying it, it is on you to basically understand and see what are the shortcomings of it and what are the decisions you have to make, right? So that is what we have did for every open source tools which we have picked up, right? For example, Elk or Prometheus or anything around it. We have experts around M2P who will, who will just breathe that, or even in their sleep they can just talk about it, right? So that is how we invest in engineering and open source systems right now.
Now, at the last of this podcast, where I just wanted to draw the podcast with some couple of points that I have in my mind. Like, how do you see the future of the open source and fintech evolving, and what are the new developments of trend do you anticipate in upcoming years? While lots of buzz around open source has been doing lately, people are moving a lot about open source, working up. The number has been increased from 6.7 million to 8 million plus. Now India is the second largest open source contributors after US. So how do you see open source and fintech industry especially getting together, making those integration and sorting those security system or compliances that comes when it comes to the fintech world?
Yeah, there are regulations which are pretty much clear right now from the regulators right now, right? So, which which is clearly giving us so much of guidance into what you have to look into and what you have to basically go for. For example, right, um, the, the systems which they want to put in and the reasons for it, which they gave for each one of those systems, is really they have thought through the requirement of what the vulnerability it can expose, right? If you see, right, whatever you expose to the world is what is going to get you at risk, right?
Yes,
So
right.
yeah, putting in the first gatekeepers and basically making sure that everything is gatekeeped, like from the olden ways of doing something called as demilitarized zones, right? So that they call it, right, where you secure your perimeter, right, to zero trust technologies which has come in, right, HashiCorps and other proponents of it, right. There are so much of open source systems and open source architectures which has come out, on which a lot of premier products are also developed, right? So open source has really is I would say it's really giving directions to even the premier products right now. And for example, a lot of things are getting open sourced, like for example Kafka or things around it, right? For example Kafka, Elk, and the things around that, right? So, and then what happens is there are teams who are giving premier support to that, right?
Okay.
That is where you have to pay. So,
Okay.
eventually, everything will be open source, is my view,
Okay.
and the the service is what is going to be, I would say, priced on, right? So that means that if you don't have the real depth knowledge of that open source, then you go and take a service provider who can give you that knowledge, right? That is
Okay.
where the world is moving towards. There are billion-dollar companies, which Confluent is a company which is doing this premier support for Kafka. And there are companies and companies like which takes care of Elk, right, which has rolled out their own premier supports. And there are database systems, for example Cassandra, for which there are premier support teams. So everything is built around Kafka, where they give it as this deep knowledge as the service, right? So going forward, I believe all the softwares or all the things which even at security level, right? HashiCorp Vault is open source, and the things around. I mean, like everything will be open source, and you will get premier support from certain customers or certain, I would say, certain vendors who will give you the premier support when you lack that depth of knowledge. So in
Okay.
fintech world, I would say more and more security patterns are getting open sourced, and OWASP is already a matured community which talks about all these systems. And OAuth 2, OAuth systems are already being open sourced, and how you capture your secrets using a secret manager is already open source involved. And layer 3, layer 4, layer 7 load balancers are already available, where you can intercept any network. So everything is there in open source right now, and everything comes first to open source to
Yes.
basically have people adopt the architecture, new architecture, and then you get into the premium support. So I don't see a challenge right now for open source community, but I see everybody is moving. I mean, like putting their thing across to open source and getting the feedback and iterating on top of it.
Yeah, so and I totally agree with all the points that you have mentioned, because building it with open source, it's so easy because you can test and develop all those architectures before actually adopting it, right? And you can save a lot of cost as well, because instead of going through a service provider, if you have good, that's what you have mentioned, if like before going to a service provider, just explore if you have the right talent. And I hope that is very mandatory, right, to have the
Yes.
right talent with you who can understand those concepts that can be very useful in terms of security as well. So while we see, UPI wallet system that Paytm has come up from the on the beginning, then GST and all these things are open source. So I just wanted to hear from you any future predictions you want to make in the fintech industry. Like the wallet thing did, it totally busted. The UPI thing, it totally changed the word. Now UPI in expanding to more countries through the G20 summit and all these things. So I just wanted to know from you, what are is there any future prediction that you want, because you are in the fintech industry from last 10 years also, you have a really great experience inside the tech. So anything that is a sum of tech as well as fintech industry that can disperse the industry, if you have anything.
I think the digital currency is what I put my all my money on. So
Okay.
India is coming up with this digital currency, and that will get open sourced, and that will be regulated. I believe RBA will be the product manager for it, and that I mean like CBDC will become an open source. I hope it will be, because that is one of the ways that other countries is already looking up India for UPI. That will be the next thing in next 5 years, that when CBDC is in full-fledged in market, everybody will start replicating it. Everybody says that that is Web 3.0, and things around the things around things like Bitcoins and Ethereums is already there in market, but CBDC is something different from all those things. Or I won't say something; it is completely different from all those, and that tech is needed across different I would say geographies, right? As it get mature. So I would put my money mostly on that side. And the next part is what comes out with the computing, right? So on the computing side, I would say the hardwares and how the silicons are getting designed is what I believe something which which is an I mean like I would say an far-fetched bet, but I still feel that that will also come in, like how ARM came out some years
Okay.
back, and that has taken up the show, right? I think the next level of I would say the processor design will also get in, because as payments are getting more digital, right? New architectures on hardware side will also come up, which takes up all this load on hardware side as well, right? As software is catching up with hardware, hardware will move to the next architecture as well. So on hardware side as well, I still see that there are a lot of the next to ARM will obviously come in next few years, and that will get open source as well.
I didn't really wanted to stress this to this question, but now I'm very excited for this question, sir. This was supposed to be the last question, but now I have a follow-up question for the statement that you made for the last question. That is around how the digital payments are different from the cryptocurrency for our audience, because they made that perception that NFTs and these Bitcoin crypto things are something similar. So I just wanted an perspective from your side, sir. If you could quickly enlighten us from this.
Yeah, that is a good question, right? So when you talk about money movement, right, somebody has to validate the money movement, right? The difference between cryptos and I would say the normal money movement is, um, the normal money movement, you have an validator which is centralized, right?
Okay.
But in crypto, it is distributed. Okay,
Yes. Okay.
so for example, let's take money, right? You cannot just print a money, but you can just use that money which is printed by the government organization, right? That means that there is somebody who regulates what is the inflow and the outflow, and who basically says this is what is uh, equivalent to gold or whatever the conversion is, right? So that is what a normal money is. That is how all the payment industry right now works. With respect to crypto, right, there is only an rule book, right? How to generate the money, how to basically move the money, and how to validate the money, right? And who can validate the money, right? That who can validate the money is always like a democracy, right?
Okay.
If
Okay.
50.0001 or like infinite point one basically says it is true, right? If Sriram has a money, and if the I would say that the 50.0001 says it is true, yes, Sriram is going to have money, right?
Okay.
The 500 rupees. And if the remaining says if Sriram doesn't have the money, right? That is not something which is going to go far, right? So that is what the real difference between an normal money and this crypto based money, because they are on a distributed ledger, right? The underlying technology is the distributed ledger. So that is where a lot of new regulations are coming in, where who can work and who can generate the money, to how I will make sure that the person who is basically generating the money is valid, right? So Ethereum has come up with this concept of proof of validator, as well as a newer concept. So to make sure that bad actors are not influencing that system, right? That is where I mean, like it's the ecosystem. If the ecosystem has the right view to on how this money has to be validated, right? Then that ecosystem will grow, and that is what everybody is, I would say, afraid of. But democracy is there in multiple places, right? So
Yes.
it's like I mean, like if the people thinks the right way, it will do right, and they have to be regulated. And I see that even for distributed money, regulation should come in. If that is not the case, I think bad actors will always jump in.
Yeah, and really thank you for these insights. And this is something like very exciting, and I would really love to to explore about the digital currency in some other podcast with you. I would be very happy to have you as our expert speaker and they have a discussion around this, because this is something that we can discuss for hours, right? So
Yeah,
this is not, but due to paucity of time, we have to end this podcast right now here. So thank you guys. Thank you for listening to this podcast. We are coming up with lots of initiatives, and we are definitely going to give you lots of knowledge as well as new avenues of future where you can build and grow. So thank you for joining us, sir. Thank you everyone for being here.
yeah. Thanks, Lakshit. Thanks, everyone. See you.